A wealthy stranger pretends to be in a coma, but when his nurse speaks her truth, a buried secret explodes. The soft hum of medical equipment blended with the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor as Nurse Elena Cruz quietly adjusted the foredrip of the man in room 209. It had been 2 weeks since the mysterious patient, no ID, no relatives, only a luxury suit torn from what must have been a car crash, was wheeled into the hospital unconscious. The doctors labeled him John Doe, but the nurses whispered their theories. Some said he was a mafia boss, others believed he was some runaway tech billionaire. But Elena didn't care who he was. She cared for him the same way she cared for every patient, gently, attentively, with a tenderness born from her own battles with silence. As she changed the bedding and softly sang a lullaby in Spanish, a song her mother once sang to her in their little kitchen in El Paso, Elena glanced at his face. Strong jaw, peppered stubble, thick lashes resting against a pale cheek. A man used to control, power. But here, he was vulnerable, unmoving. His stillness reminded her of the hardest time in her life, when her father, after a stroke, had fallen into a coma and never returned. Back then, she was 16, scared, and invisible to the world. That was when she promised herself that if she couldn't save him, she'd dedicate her life to saving others. Late one evening, the hospital was quieter than usual. Rain tapped gently against the window as Elena sat beside Mr. Doe, chart in hand, though her mind wandered elsewhere. She looked around the empty room, then leaned closer. "You know," she whispered, brushing her thumb across his hand to check circulation, "sometimes I wonder if patients in comas can still hear us. If somewhere, beneath all the stillness, your soul is listening." She sighed. "If you are, I need to tell you something. Not for you, really. For me." Elena's voice trembled. "I almost quit nursing last month. I work double shifts just to cover Mom's dialysis. I eat lunch standing over a desk. And I'm so tired of pretending I'm strong. Some nights, I sit in the parking lot and cry before walking in with a smile. But then, I come into rooms like this. Rooms where the world has stopped for someone else. And it humbles me. It reminds me that someone else might be fighting even harder in silence." Her hand remained on his. "So, I'll keep showing up. Even if no one says thank you. Even if they never wake up. Because love doesn't need witnesses." The room fell silent again, save for the beeping monitor and the gentle tapping of rain. Elena stood to leave, brushing a hand across his forehead. But behind his closed eyes, something stirred. That night, the man in room 209 opened his eyes. He didn't call for help. Didn't alert the nurses. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, Elena's words echoing in his mind like thunder in the mountains. Love doesn't need witnesses. This wasn't the first time he'd heard her voice. Truth was, Patrick Langston, multimillionaire venture capitalist, ruthless dealmaker, and owner of 5 sports cars, wasn't in a coma. He had faked it. 2 weeks earlier, he'd staged a crash to escape the vultures circling his fortune. A bitter divorce, a boardroom coup, whispers of betrayal from his own brother, he couldn't trust anyone anymore. He needed to vanish, to see what the world looked like without his wealth casting shadows. He thought it would be an experiment. A temporary retreat. But he hadn't anticipated her. Every word Elena whispered in that sterile room felt like sunlight breaking through a lifetime of fog. Her compassion, her vulnerability, her quiet dignity, it cut through his apathy. She didn't know who he was, yet she showed up with her whole heart. Over the next few days, Patrick watched through half-lidded eyes, memorizing every detail of her kindness. The way she comforted patients' families, gave her lunch to the intern who forgot his, and once tucked a forgotten birthday card under a lonely old man's pillow. This was not a woman pretending. This was the real world, unfiltered, beautiful in its aching sincerity. He couldn't stay silent forever. On a cloudy Wednesday morning, as Elena adjusted his blanket, Patrick finally moved. Good morning, he rasped. Elena dropped the clipboard, eyes wide with disbelief. You're awake. He nodded slowly, his voice still hoarse. Thanks to you. Doctors flooded the room. His recovery was labeled a miracle. But Patrick refused to explain how or why he woke. Not yet. After a few more days of observation, he was cleared for discharge. Elena wheeled him to the lobby, still unaware of his true identity. As she turned to say goodbye, Patrick grasped her hand. There's something I need to confess, he said quietly. My name is Patrick Langston. I'm not just some John Doe. I'm someone who forgot what it meant to be human. Elena blinked. You faked the coma? He nodded, guilt in his eyes. I thought I'd escaped the world. But you reminded me what matters. You spoke to me like I mattered, even when you thought I couldn't hear. You didn't need a name or a face. Just a heartbeat. She stepped back, shock and hurt warring in her expression. You lied. I did, he admitted. But not anymore. He pulled an envelope from his coat. Inside this is a check. Enough to pay off your mother's treatments. And a scholarship in your name, for nurses who care like you do, not because of money, but because of heart. Elena stared at him, stunned. Why are you doing this? He smiled softly. Because you showed me the kind of wealth I never had. And I want to start earning it. Tears welled in her eyes. You didn't have to do this. I had to, he whispered. For once, I had to be the witness. They stood there in silence, the weight of truth between them no longer heavy, but freeing. Elena finally nodded, taking the envelope with trembling fingers. Thank you, Patrick. Weeks passed. Patrick sold his penthouse and bought a modest home near the hospital. He started volunteering at a shelter, learning how to listen. Elena finished her nurse practitioner degree, funded in part by the scholarship that now carried her name. They crossed paths often, once strangers in a quiet hospital room, now allies in a world that needed more healing. And every so often, Elena would sing that old Spanish lullaby as she walked the halls. Sometimes, if you listened closely, you'd hear a quiet hum joining in. Because love, as she once said, doesn't need witnesses, but it creates them anyway.